Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's virtual open house. We're here to discuss the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo's Municipal Development Plan. We'll be calling it the MDP throughout the evening. My name is Nadia Power. I'm the Manager for Public Engagement with the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo. I'm really pleased to have you join us this evening. No matter where you might be tuning in from, I want to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on Treaty 8 and unceded Métis territory. And also, before we get started, I want you to know that we have rehearsed and prepared as much as we can, but we are a little bit at the whim of technology. Please bear with us if we have any technological problems here this evening. If for some reason your connection is lost, there is another way that you can listen in. The dial-in phone number and the conference ID will be available in the chat box, the Q&A chat box. Feel free to jot that down somewhere just in case you lose this connection and you'd like to call in and listen. Let me give you a bit of an overview of how the evening is going to go. First of all, I want to introduce the other people joining me at this open house event. We have Such Chandiok and Shailish Makwana, the supervisor and a planner with our Planning and Development Department here at the municipality. Joining us from Calgary, the O2 team includes Andrew Palmier, Nicholas Cool, and Pamela Downey. So in just a minute, I'm going to be inviting Such to give us more information about the Municipal Development Plan and how it will support the growth and development of our region for the next 20 years. Then the O2 Planning and Design team will present the draft MDP. And then after that, we will open the floor for your questions. Throughout the presentation, the Q&A chat feature is available for you, and you can ask questions, provide your feedback in there. Staff are monitoring that, and they will be passing your questions along here so we can get those asked and answered. To protect all participants' privacy, your microphones and cameras have been disabled. And again, to protect your privacy, the Q&A chat viewing capability is only visible to the staff here who are looking at the questions, but we are monitoring those and those questions are coming directly to me. I want to let you know as well that this evening's event in its entirety will be posted at rmwb.ca/MDP. You'll be able to find a link there and view the entire event at another occasion. Perhaps you don't have time to tune into the whole event, or if you want to come back and check on something, or you might just want to refer some other people you know who might be interested in this. Now, I'm going to turn things over to Such. Such will have a chance to introduce himself, and then the work that brings us here this evening. Such?
Thank you, Nadia. Good evening, everybody. As Nadia mentioned, my name is Such Chandiok. I'm a supervisor with Planning and Development. First and foremost, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. A little bit of background about the Municipal Development Plan. A Municipal Development Plan, or an MDP, is a visionary guiding document. This plan guides how growth and development would occur in the municipality. Under the current Municipal Government Act, every municipality is required to have a Municipal Development Plan. While we currently have a growth-based MDP, which was approved in 2011, Council's strategic plan identified revision of this plan as one of the action items. Last year, Planning and Development Department did a lot of background research and evaluated the policies in the current MDP for their application in current context. We also studied about 18 municipal development plans from all over Canada to identify new topics or themes that the new MDP can include. After a detailed background study, we found that a lot has changed since 2011, and MDP 2011 must be revised to match the current reality of the region. Thereafter, planning consultants O2 Planning and Design were brought on board to help us write the new MDP. Andrew from O2 Planning and Design is here with us today to talk about our strategy, approach, and the results of phase 1 engagement along with our progress on this project so far. With that, I will invite Andrew to proceed with the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Such. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. So we have prepared a presentation to go through, and then I would believe the intent is to start opening up to questions at the end of that. I would say that if you have questions now, feel free to put them in the chat box so that you don't forget them, because there is a few slides to go through here. So the essential agenda for this presentation tonight is to really go over a review of the project, talk about some of the high-level background research that's been conducted, review sort of the high-level phase 1 engagement that we'd conducted last fall, talk about the draft vision and goals that have emerged from all of this work to date, and how those vision and goals have translated into sort of overarching big moves for the MDP as it starts to emerge. And then with that, to talk about some generalized land use concept within the municipal development plan, and then inform you about sort of next steps. In terms of project review, as such it indicated, really the Wood Buffalo is preparing a new municipal development plan that really is looking to reflect the changes both socially, culturally, and economically within the region. It's important to ensure. Sorry, what was? I thought I heard something. I think it's important to ensure that the municipal development plan reflects local values, opportunities, and challenges, and that it sets a clear vision for the region's future. So taking a step back even from that, we just wanted to sort of touch on what an MDP does do. So it's essentially, within the context of Wood Buffalo, it's a 20-year vision. It provides a comprehensive land use policy framework. It outlines a strategic path forward to manage growth across the region. And it's really important in that it guides both short and long-term decision-making by council and administration. And the decisions within that plan will shape the development and the future changes made within the community. So it's an important plan, it's an important document, and it's something that requires a lot of thought, a lot of work, and a lot of engagement to ensure that it's right. So stepping back to 2011, the MDP that you're currently operating under really was very much a growth-oriented and growth-focused plan. And it talked about by 2030 that the region's population would grow to over 230,000 people. Clearly, this hasn't happened and likely will not happen. And there's a number of things that sort of drove that that shift. I mean, we had the floods in 2013. I would say significantly the global drop in oil prices and the resulting economic downturn that started in 2014. The 2016 Horse River wildfires, the 2020 floods. I mean, just saying those out loud, that's a lot. And in response to the changing environments, the social and the economic environment, the municipality has taken that opportunity to reflect on what the municipality wants to achieve and to become through this new municipal development plan document. So really where we are in this, if you take a look at this diagram, is phase 2 engagement, and you can see it over by the number 4 on the bottom here. But there's a whole workflow that has gone into the document to date, from background research, phase 1 engagement, an analysis piece, the drafting of the vision, the goals, the big moves, and the policies. And that's where we are right now, and that's why we wanted to come to you as residents of the region, as important stakeholders in the region, to sort of vet these ideas off of you before we move forward with finalizing the MDP, really drafting and completing out all of the policies, and then bringing it forward for council review in May of this year. So in terms of the background research and review component, which you can see here is the dark blue, as such actually alluded to. So our fundamental starting point was, of course, the 2011 MDP. What's the current applicability of it? What can we bring forward in the new document, and what maybe needs to be reworked, thought of, or even just sort of discarded? On top of that analysis, we looked at 15 other municipalities, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Whitehorse, a variety of different places for reasons either they were new best practices and we wanted to see what we could glean and learn from it, places that were more resource based and that might be really suitable and have interesting ideas that Wood Buffalo could benefit from. But we did an extensive best practice review, and then we started to look at Wood Buffalo's own policies, and there were over 50 documents that we went through. And I mean, the slide here has just 3 sort of example ones here, the Parks Master Plan, the Culture Plan, the Wood Buffalo Social Sustainability Plan. And what we wanted to make sure here is that we understood that entire context, because municipalities are complicated places, and there's a lot of guiding documents that are in place, and we wanted to really try to fully understand what was going on within Wood Buffalo. And then we also had the 2020 place brand strategy, and we wanted to ensure there was some alignment with that too. And on top of those sort of three components, we also did some site analysis and mapping. We did site visits and meetings. We mapped current conditions, and we started looking into population and employment projections as well, and looking at opportunities and challenges within the region. So some of the major takeaways that we got from all of that first round of background research was that many of the policies from 2011 do remain relevant, but also many need some revision or replacement. So we had a good starting point for the document, and we were really happy to see that. It was a very well constructed MDP. But the heavy focus on growth from the 2011 plan, it's no longer really relevant anymore. And what we started to see and through our conversations and discussions, and particularly in the first phase of engagement, which I'll go over with you in a moment, was this idea of people first. We need to really think about community and a community-based approach for the 2021 MDP, rather than just a real emphasis on growth. So with that, our phase 1 engagement was conducted. This was conducted in September and October. I mean, it started at the end of September and it ran, I think, until like November 1st or something like somewhere around there of last year. And what did we do? Well, hopefully some of you were participants in that first round of engagement, but our goals in that engagement were really to introduce the project, to create awareness about it, to identify through that engagement the vision, the values, and the priorities of the community and the stakeholders, to learn about initial concerns and priorities and opportunities, and also to incorporate feedback to really, really drive this plan. This is a community-based plan, and we want this to be, directly related to the input we hear, even absolutely today. So we did several open houses. We had 35 workshops and in-person virtual meetings. We had online survey, interactive mapping opportunities, social media posts, promotional videos. It was an extensive communications and engagement strategy. And we got over 700 participants into it, and we've got some really, really good ideas. And what we gained insight into here was that a community-based approach to the MDP was preferred, and that was really helpful, and it was really appreciated to have all of those conversations. And what we did is we created an engagement summary, or a what we heard report. And what we started to find going through all of that qualitative data was that there was 5 main categories for themes that started to emerge out of our discussions in that first round of engagement. And it was people and community, nature and recreation, responsible development, the economy and innovation, arts, culture, and representation. And there were sort of all of these 21 different points here that sort of come out between that, but those were sort of the 5 main categories that you really start to see emerge quite clearly from our first round of engagement. So from there, with the background research in hand, with the first round of public engagement in hand, the analysis completed, we started to really look at what is the draft vision and goals that we could use, and how do we bring all of this together and synthesize it in a way that really is a clear indication of community priority, best practice, background research, and understanding Wood Buffalo current policy context. And we have this interesting sort of flow diagram here, which sort of tells you what we did. Is we had sort of the place brand building blocks, which you can see sort of on the left, the 2011 MDP goals and objectives that we felt were transferable and important to understand, and then the feedback categories from that first round of engagement. And then taking those together, again, it was synthesizing them down to sort of 5 key ideas, and that was celebrating cultural diversity, inclusion, community and belonging, economic resilience and innovation, connecting to nature, and responsible development. And with that in mind, we drafted, working back and forth with the planning group, with Such and with Shailesh, who are here with us today, a draft vision. And I'll kind of go through this. I actually may go ahead and actually read it. But, you know, our draft vision is that it's a diverse region to live, work, play, and stay forever. And that's important. You know, the wood buffalo of tomorrow will be built on our greatest strengths. Our region is a place like no other, a place of incredible opportunity and natural wonder, a place of resilient community spirit, cultural diversity, and remarkable Indigenous strength. By focusing and building on what makes wood buffalo great, we will pursue the opportunity together for all those who call wood buffalo home. We will continue to develop a region with a place and community-based approach to reflect local values and make it a forever home. Creating a healthy and sustainable region for tomorrow is wood buffalo's story to tell, and this is only the beginning. So I think that's great. You know, I think it's an exciting vision, and we'd love to get feedback and hear from you on your thoughts on it. But complementing that vision are those 5 goals that I alluded to earlier: community and belonging, connecting to nature, responsible development, celebrating cultural diversity and inclusion, and economic resilience and innovation. And that all centered around this idea of a community-based approach. So very quickly, the goals: community and belonging. Wood buffalo provides a sense of place, safety, and belonging, fostered by a community built around meeting the needs of all. Wood buffalo's cherished wilderness, protected natural ecosystems, and lively parks, open spaces, and waterfront are a hallmark of our region, and that's connecting to nature. Responsible development as a goal. As a desirable location to live for all who come to our region, wood buffalo grows intentionally with development that makes life better for all. Economic resilience and innovation. Economic diversification and development will bring resiliency to our local economy and prosperity throughout wood buffalo, while not forgetting our core industry. And that's a critical statement. And then celebrating cultural diversity and inclusion. Brimming with pride, our region celebrates its Indigenous history and is committed to ongoing reconciliation. The recognition of our unique past, vibrant arts, cultural, global diversity, and inclusivity make wood buffalo an amazing place to live. Stronger together. So with those goals in mind, what we started to really think about here are, how do those translate into overarching big moves? And that's really in the dark blue where we are right now. The vision, those goals, all directly linked to everything that I discussed, from engagement and the best practice review and the analysis, and then translating those into tangible big moves, which we've done. So the big moves represent major ways that the 2021 MDP differs from the 2011 MDP. And the big moves work together to achieve the goals and vision of this emerging plan. So in all, we have 9 overarching big moves that I'll quickly go through here. The first one being a focus on people and community, which is this community-based approach I've been talking about. Establishing the idea of a green and blue network, leveraging those ideas of connecting to nature, leveraging existing assets and expertise, simplifying the transportation network, foster downtown as the heart of the region, an evidence-based approach to work camps, increase arts and cultural representation and collaboration, responsible, intentional approach to growth, and emphasize rural communities. So in focus on people and community, the core idea here, and where policies will start to emerge from, is that at the heart of all of our communities are the people. You know, we need to ensure that residents have access to their daily needs within an accessible, safe environment, provide social, cultural, recreation, and employment opportunities to support a healthy and fulfilling lives. And really, it's about creating a really, really high quality of life that just becomes the envy of the province, at least, if not the nation. You know, it's about creating a great place to stay and to live. Establishing a green and blue networks. So what this is really talking about was the idea of connecting to nature. A green network is really thinking about natural open spaces and trails across the region, increasing recreation and mobility options, really taking advantage of the fact that like one of the most spectacular things about Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo as a whole is your opportunity to camp, to fish, to motorbike or cycle or whatever it may be, and look at the blue network as well, enhancing the waterfront and with river recreation opportunities, improving flood protection, recognizing a historic connection to the river and the water, and really thinking about those two things to balance the need to preserve sensitive landscapes with the desire to access nature. It's an incredible opportunity. Leveraging existing assets and expertise. I mean, Wood Buffalo is so well positioned to leverage its existing expertise into innovative and new opportunities. The new MDP is really going to help. It's about promoting the pursuit of local innovation through supporting businesses, our business incubator spaces, increasing post-secondary education opportunities, and ensuring that, not to use the overused term, but that Wood Buffalo is open for business, that the planning of the community it's there and it's very clear to business, and it's very clear to that entrepreneurial spirit that Wood Buffalo is a place to be and a place to set up shop. And it's about providing greater economic balance and stability and opportunity for a high quality of life for residents. Simplify the transportation network. I mean, very, very simply, the whole idea here is that it's about right-sizing the transportation network. The 2011 MDP anticipated 230,000 people by 2030, and the big moves within it from a transportation perspective were geared towards that level of population growth. That's no longer the focus, and it's really about thinking, about mobility, improving efficiency of roads, optimizing existing transit options, and clawing back some of the stuff that is no longer relevant and necessary for the region itself. Fostering downtown is the heart of the region. Anybody who's been involved in Fort McMurray in particular, or Wood Buffalo as a whole, would know that the downtown area redevelopment plan has been underway. A really important piece of work that Fort McMurray is the economic center of Wood Buffalo, and that the lower town site acts as the heart of Fort McMurray and the region itself. So, we're really looking at the downtown area redevelopment plan as a transformative and an extremely important piece of the municipal development plan itself, to take guidance and respect the downtown as the heart of the region, emphasize connections to McDonald Island, and then grow it into an exciting arts, entertainment, and cultural district. There's good bones in the downtown, and it can just become this spectacular place. And that vision from the downtown area redevelopment plan is great, and it's really exciting. So, not to go too far into this one right now, but we're really looking at sort of a reset on how to reconsider an approach to manage work camps in the region. There's different approaches that have been discussed in the past, a radius-based one you can see here, you see that circle, or you can look at a distance traveled based location. So what we want to do here is really think about how this could be rethought in an evidence-based approach, working with industry. Increase arts and cultural representation and collaboration. Obviously, Wood Buffalo has a multicultural identity, and it's rooted in a rich First Nations and Métis heritage. And the 2018 census recorded a significant ethnic diversity, which is an incredible asset to Wood Buffalo. And the quality of life for all is enhanced through these opportunities to celebrate the unique cultures of the region. So, the MDP really needs to talk about the promotion and participation in diverse arts and cultural activities, provide educational opportunities to bring people together, and to make sure that people's voices are heard and there's an opportunity to express their ideas and to tell their stories. It's pretty remarkable, and it's a huge strength to build off of. Responsible and intentional growth is a big move. As we've said repeatedly through this presentation, the 2011 was about growth, 230,000 people by 2030. But what has happened now is it's become very clear that the region largely has the required lands to accommodate growth over the MDP's planning horizon. So the 2021 MDP is not looking to allow additional growth areas until the existing ones are built out. And really, it's about focusing efforts and investments on existing communities and allowing the prioritization and enhancing of amenities, that for communities that already exist, and just focusing really on making Wood Buffalo the best it can possibly be, and less of a concern about, extensive growth. And the other big move really is also to emphasize rural communities. Wood Buffalo is like one of the largest municipalities in Canada, and due to its size, the MDP, needs to incorporate guidance for both urban and rural communities, as well as the region as a whole. And since the 2011 MDP, there have been a number of ASPs completed for some of these rural communities, and we need to make sure that when we reconfirm the desires and the goals and objectives of these rural communities, and make sure that that's translated up into the MDP as a really important driving factor of the next 20 years. So we actually have an open house next week as well that will be, delving a little bit more into some of the rural community components of it, but it's extremely important that the unique needs of the rural communities are also front and center as part of this new MDP. So very simply, in terms of a generalized land use right now, we have sort of 2 or 3 maps here that we just wanted to quickly share. And the idea here is of a potential green and blue network connection. This is by no means anything more than just sort of a notional idea of connectivity of both river systems, but also trail network opportunities, and the idea of really that celebrating and access to nature, and also the idea of looking at important natural landscapes. And this would obviously require its own work. This is really just about setting out the idea of this as an important big move moving forward for Wood Buffalo. And then we have a land use map, which I'll show in a second. And within it, there's sort of generalized land use categories of the downtown or community core, neighborhood cores, which are really about minor centers for community life, activity, and commerce. We have established residential areas, and then priority residential areas. And established ones are currently built out, and priority are areas where new residential could be or will be focused. Municipal infrastructure, which are things like sewage lagoons, landfills, things of that nature. And then we have 2 types of employment. So the existing employment or the established employment, and then priority locations for new employment concentrations. And then obviously parks and conservation areas. And what you can see here, I think, makes a lot of sense, and we're really interested in hearing some feedback on this. But it really is Parson Creek, for instance, Saline Creek Plateau are the primary priority residential areas for further development. Significant priority employment, immediately south of Fort McMurray and adjacent to the airport itself. This recognizes the neighborhood cores in Timberley and Thickwood Heights, and all Beacon Hill, etc. And what's really important in this map that wasn't in 2011 is it establishes that downtown. And, as that big move of recognizing the downtown as the heart of the region, this map is really important towards, sort of a simplified version of the downtown area redevelopment plan as an expression in the MDP. So in terms of next steps, the project team, we're all ears. We're extremely interested to hear back from everyone, and we'll prepare an engagement summary of what we heard, and then we're going to boldly move ahead at creating and drafting the full MDP itself, with the intent of bringing a finalized MDP to council by May of this year. And your involvement or your role over the next phases of the project is to stay informed, provide us feedback, please, and then ultimately to review the draft and hopefully come forward at council and take advantage of the public hearing and have your voice heard there as well. So I think we can probably open this up to questions. And again, here you can stay informed, and the web address is there at rmwb.ca/MDP. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew, so much. My goodness, that was a lot of information. This presentation, I just wanted to point out too that the entire presentation will be available for you to have a look at later. We'll be posting this at rmwb.ca/MDP. So it was a lot of information to get through, and we have had some questions coming in. Andrew, as you were going through the presentation, anybody who's joining us on the line, if you haven't already, if you have any questions, comments even, just put those in the Q&A chat for us and we'll get to those. We have our subject matter experts here who are happy to try to answer any of the questions you have. And also, if you could think of a question afterwards, you know, it's not that this is your last opportunity to ask a question. And on the rmwb.ca/MDP site that I've just mentioned, there is an ask a question feature there. So if you think of a question after we wrap up this evening, by all means, we're watching that, monitoring it all the time, and we'll get to your questions. I wanted to point out, I just wanted to mention as well, that I am here at Jubilee at City Hall on Franklin Avenue. And two staff, we have Megan and Arndis also here helping to facilitate this evening. I thank them very much for being here with us, but we're all in separate offices to make sure that we're maintaining the appropriate distancing and space between us. So if you see me from time to time turning, it's because Megan is bringing in some questions that we're getting that are coming in, and I do want to get to some of those questions right now. The first one, the person who's asked has not put their name in the chat box. That's fine, but I'm going to direct this to Such, if I may. And the question is, I saw mention of this in Andrew's presentation, but the question is, does the MDP include Saline Plateau as an existing community? Such, can you take that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nadia. Under the MDP, the idea of an MDP is documented at a very, very high level. There's no existing community, but the idea is established residential communities or focused or, communities there where we want to focus residential. And Andrew, perhaps if you can go back to the land use bylaw map there on the presentation, this one. You can see the area of Parsons Creek right at the top there, and the Saline Creek Plateau there are identified as priority residential areas. A lot of planning has been done for these areas, and so we are identifying these areas as the areas where development would occur in future. So again, there's no existing residential concept. It's just the communities that are already established residential and communities that we foresee as developable into residential communities. Back to you, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Such. I like to be able to see the map there too, and I know that's included in the presentation. People can go and find the information online. The next question is related to residential as well. I'm going to direct this to Pam, joining us with O2. The question is from Dan. Dan is asking, will affordable housing be incorporated into the 2021 MDP? Pam?
Hi, yes, thank you so much. Yes, the MDP recognizes that Wood Buffalo's diverse population needs an equally diverse housing supply. And to create long-term stability in the region, the MDP is considering a wide range of housing types, densities, sizes, and tenures that would be suitable for different incomes, ages, and demographic groups throughout the region. And through this process, the MDP is considering, where appropriate, to promote infill and mixed-use development, to create more housing options in Wood Buffalo's housing supply. And we're also interested in exploring housing options that can accommodate a variety of housing needs, incomes, and lifestyles, with emphasis on innovations that specifically address northern climate and promote affordability, community attractiveness, and long-term stability for the community. And back to you, Nadia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Pam. I'm going to stick with you, if you don't mind, keep your microphone on. I'm going to direct this next question to you as well. It says, and it's from Shauna. Shauna wants to know, how will public art be part of the MDP?
That is a great question. Thank you, Shauna. So the MDP recognizes that public art provides an amazing opportunity to share and display the region's rich heritage, cultures, and identities, and tell stories. So the MDP is looking at ways to incorporate public art pieces and initiatives into public spaces and development that are relevant to the region and enrich public space for everyone. And the MDP is also looking at a variety of different partnerships, such as partnering with schools and community groups or local artists, First Nation and Métis communities, and private sector to develop a wide range of public art throughout the region. We'd also like to encourage partnerships with local artists and groups as much as possible. So thanks, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Pam. That's great. This next question, I think Andrew, and Andrew, if it's not for you, please feel free to let me know if somebody else on your team should answer this, but the question comes from Krista. Krista is asking, how will the approval of the MDP directly affect me and my family moving forward? Andrew?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's an interesting question, right? Because when you think of, like the most obvious and simple planning document is like a zoning bylaw, right? Which immediately affects your ability to build a fence or do an addition on your house. And an MDP is so many steps above that as a strategic document that really is going to drive the goals and the priorities of the municipality and council for the next 20 years. So over time, as these big moves start to get implemented, you'll start to see if the blue-green network comes to fruition, an incredible trails opportunities, economic diversity, jobs for your children, jobs, if you're an entrepreneur, you'll have a clear sense of areas for growth and development and change. Set up shop and set up businesses. This community-based approach to planning, we'll start to see, when you look at these neighborhood cores on this map, you start to see them evolve and emerge over time, and new ones coming online potentially in Parsons Creek or in the Saline Creek Plateau of local goods and services. And then we had the conversation earlier about transit as well. So it's sort of like this incremental change over time of short, medium, and long-term priorities that start to implement the overarching vision and the big moves of the plan. So, over time, it'll be extensive and expansive. In the day one of the MDP implication or adoption, not so much. It is a long-term plan. So, but what you read in here, and as you see it over time, it's going to be just the enhancement of the region, enhancement of the rural communities, enhancement of Fort McMurray, and the creation of just, building on the incredible bones it has to be a phenomenal place to raise a family, to retire to, and to set up business.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Andrew. Yes, lots of really interesting things to consider, that this is a 20-year plan. And so when people are giving input now, it's really looking at framing what the community, what the region is going to look like for the next generation. And so, it really is important to keep that in mind, that it's how the region is going to be guided in its development over the next 20 years. That relates to another question that's come in here. Now, it's from Anonymous, but I think it relates very well to what you've just been talking about, Andrew. I'm going to direct this one. I'm going to ask Shailesh if he can weigh in on this. The question is, how does this plan that we're preparing now, how does this differ from the 2011 MDP? And I know we've talked about that in the presentation as we went through, but Shailesh, can you give us an idea of some of the really key changes that we'll see from the 2011 MDP?
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Nadia. I think it is the really key component of the question, rationale behind why we are doing this new MDP. The current MDP was prepared on an exponential growth model base, and it was on resource access and industry only. The variables and conditions that were considered or assumed at the time of preparing the current MDP are changed, and I think it's well presented in the presentation in the early slides why we are doing the MDP. So I'm saying that the major difference is on the focus and vision of the new MDP. The MDP will be reflective of the current social, environmental, cultural, and economic conditions of the region. The MDP will focus on a place and community-based approach. That is, I think, the bigger or big kind of a difference that I'm seeing from what we are preparing right now. Also, I would like to highlight a few of the themes that I think we discussed, we presented in the presentation clearly, that we are focusing on in inclusion of the new MDP. The new MDP will include specific policies reflecting the call to action that is the Council has adopted, TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation. It will also include environmental and ecological management with climate change considerations. I think the MDP is focusing on economic resilience and diversity in the region, which we talk about, and we really want to focus on the place and people in the region. So that is the kind of a focus that we want in the MDP, or we are looking forward as to include. Placemaking and policy directions for waterfront, the education, research, innovation, and aspects from infrastructure and knowledge of resource extraction in the region we have. Those are the new concepts, actually, those are the soft skills that we already have, and which is not been elevated or highlighted and utilized in the way it should be. So I think the new MDP is more focused on that. Other than that, I would also like to highlight the major difference that this new MDP will have approach to include some policies on the implementation. It will have some guidelines how to implement these policies that we are talking about, high level kind of. And also we want to have some guidelines to monitor and update this MDP to keep it live in coming years, so that it can still be effective, not like the one that we are seeing, the current MDP that is kind of a little out of context now. In summary, I think the new MDP will represent the region with its offering and presenting who we are. It will focus on the assets that we have, our people and place, and the MDP will have focus on establishing directions for a community where people get a sense of community and to call it a home. That is the big difference, shifting from the exponential growth versus towards the sense of community where people can stay, live, work, and stay here forever. That's, I think, the big difference. Thank you, Nadia.
Shailesh, yes, thanks for that. I think it is really important that we recognize Council's made it a priority in their strategic plan. They have asked us to make some updates to the municipal development plan, recognizing that there have been some really significant changes in the environment. Andrew talked about those, earlier in the presentation, not just things like the fire and the flood this year and the change in the economic resiliency, diversity, all of those types of things, but recognizing too the importance of bringing things like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action into our municipal development plan and how they're integrated into that. The really considering climate change and what kind of an impact that's going to have on the municipal development plan. So for those reasons, it's really important to, have your overarching document, but also know when there are significant enough shifts happening that we need to go in and have a look and revise that. And so, as Andrew has been talking about, it wasn't just tossing out everything that was done in 2011. And as you've pointed out, Shailesh, we look at what we can take from the 2011 MDP and what we need to change now going forward. Kind of sticking with the same theme, just for another question, I think maybe we can ask this one of Andrew. And again, it comes in from anonymous, but it's interesting because this person is asking, can you elaborate on why the word forever, and forever in quotes, is included in this MDP's vision statement? Andrew, can you comment on that?
That's a good question. I think the emphasis, and it's a draft vision, and it'd be, we're very interested in hearing feedback on it, and it's certainly open to some modification for sure. But I think the idea was that Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo has always been seen as a place where you come to work for a short amount of time, you make money, and then you go home, right? And I think the idea here is that this MDP is about making this home, and that this is the place you want to stay, you want to invest in, you want to buy a house, you want to raise a family, or whatever that looks like to you. And it becomes a place where you start to think of it as that long-term commitment because you love the community, you love the amenity, you love everything it has to offer, and you can age in place here too. You can think about your retirement, and it's that huge shift. I think it's just that fundamental shift from being a place where you come to make money to a place where you actually just come to take root. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to direct the next question back to you. This is a great one, and I'm interested to learn more about this myself. Again, coming in from an anonymous, I was going to say caller, somebody who's tuned in this evening and watching. But the question, Andrew, is can you please explain what do you mean by the green and blue networks? Can you talk about those a little bit to elaborate?
Yeah. Absolutely. Just one moment here. I'll go back to the slide. Of course, it was a while ago. Here we go. Okay. So within sort of a higher level policy and planning framework, when we talk about a green network and a blue network, it's really the relationship of thinking about the connections of natural open spaces, trails, park spaces across the region. The idea of increasing recreation and mobility, enhancing open space, and improving access to natural areas in a really sustainable manner. So, you really start to think about how do you provide, because Wood Buffalo has so much incredible potential, like natural potential, is how do you really capture that as an important asset for the community from now and into the future? And at the same time, green is, land. And in the simplest terms, blue, we're talking about water and waterfront and water recreation opportunities, but also climate resiliency that can come with it too, to improve flood protection. You don't start eroding banks and those sorts of things, and that you look at those historic and important connections to river and water. So it just becomes this layered approach to thinking about recreation, open space, water, and just enhancing and building those together to really improve and protect important landscapes, but also to really improve access to nature and those incredible opportunities that Wood Buffalo has. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. And I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a follow-up question there myself. To me, when you were going through this, and when I've been reviewing the plan, when I think about green and blue networks, I think about it, this is how they would appear on a map. Any map that you look at, it's going to be green and blue. It's not necessarily the green environmental or things like that, though it does certainly factor in. But what I'm wondering, is this kind of standard practice? Is this new to here and to this plan, or is this a familiar way that planners would integrate the whole idea of the green and blue networks? Like, is this a common theory and theme, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the follow-up. It is a concept that is used elsewhere. It is, while it definitely has that ecological root, like you were alluding to, it is very much a recreation and an open space and a people-based approach just as well. And yeah, we ourselves as a firm have used it in other places, and it's certainly part of, from a parks planning and a recreation planning perspective, it is part of the nomenclature of those professions as well. So it's very much something that we thought was a great opportunity to bring in as a best practice and really capture what we heard in that first round of engagement from what people really love about the region is just that access to nature and that access to water, and putting a strategic decision or a strategic move in to think about how you can focus on that and enhance that and drive that forward as an incredible opportunity for the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. It's really great to see that as one of the big moves integrated into the proposed new municipal development plan. Thanks. Sorry, I'm going to keep you right on the hot seat, though. I think this next question is going to come to you as well. Maxwell is asking, this is a great question. Are the current and future impacts of the pandemic already factored into this MDP? So have they been factored in or haven't they?
Yeah, that is a really interesting question. I mean, I would say they have immediately in terms of we're having an online engagement session tonight, and the opportunities that we've had to look at here in terms of moving to an online platform. But I don't think that's really what the question's about. And I would say that, the full impacts of the pandemic, I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what that's going to be yet. But one thing that we have heard and we have discussed about and talked about is, the ability of people to work remotely, work from home, access and local access to shops and the ability to get outside, to recreate, to enjoy nature still. All of that is a huge priority within the plan, right? And great communities like that, communities that allow that flexibility, that provide that access to nature, that provide that mixed use, provide walkability, are going to be the places that remain resilient into the future. So, I think good planning practice is fundamentally, pandemic resistant into a large extent. And that flexibility of use, that all of those good components of city building will only allow, I think, Wood Buffalo, it will serve them well in the future, and it'll serve us all well into the future for sure. So I would say, while the impacts, obviously we won't know until they happen, we've heard lots of stuff on how the workforce is changing. People can work remotely, and this plan accommodates and allows for all of that. And wouldn't it be great for somebody to live in Wood Buffalo, but their job is in Calgary, and they choose to live in Wood Buffalo because they love it there, and it's such a great place to be. And you could reverse commute from what you would have typically historically seen, where people come up from Calgary, or they come from St. John's or wherever it may be. But why not stay in Wood Buffalo and telecommute to Toronto? So this plan will allow all of it, and it'll provide a great community and great opportunities for everybody still to have opportunities to connect in nature and the social opportunities that come with it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Andrew. Great. The next question, I think this might be Such. If you would have a listen to this, it's sort of a long question, but I think that maybe you could answer this, or if you want to have somebody else weigh in as well, just, please do. Kevin is asking, with the focus on downtown revitalization, is the RMWB working with the major employers of the region to bring employees into the downtown core and to build density and development and try to retain jobs in the region as opposed to moving them out of the city? Now, I know that, Andrew had brought up a really, really interesting point just now when he talked about the reverse commute. That's a really lovely idea. But I'm going to ask Such if you wanted to weigh in on this one. Andrew might want to make a comment as well. So the question is, again, from Kevin, with the focus on downtown revitalization, is the RMWB working with the major employers of the region to bring employees into the downtown core, build density and development, try to retain jobs in the region, as opposed to moving them out of the city? Such?
Thank you, Nadia. That is a very good question, and it relates to downtown, which is a very, very important factor in our MDP. I mean, we've been talking about downtown for I don't know how many years, and our focus has been to ensure that downtown gets the respect it deserves. Through the MDP or through the area redevelopment plan for downtown that's happening right now, our focus is to ensure that downtown gets more population, more businesses go in downtown. It has never been the intention to focus development or to focus employment out of downtown. We are still working with the area redevelopment plan that's happening. It's still yet to be approved. But our focus in the MDP is to ensure that whatever comes out of the area redevelopment plan, we have synergies in the municipal development plan and area redevelopment plan. So both of these documents work together to achieve the desired result that we've been talking about for the longest time, I guess, which is to focus on downtown and bring more people in downtown. Back to you, Nadia.
Thanks. Thank you, Such. I have another question here that came in on the line from Anonymous. And when we saw this come up from our team, Nick, I think, is going to be wanting to answer this, or he has said that he'd like to answer this question. The question is, in regards to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I'm assuming the TRC calls to action, how much First Nation engagement has been done for the rural communities? In particular, in Fort McKay and Janvier, the maps look like they ignore First Nation component of these communities, even though the First Nation makes up more than 75% of these communities. Nick, can you answer that?
Thank you very much for that question, Nadia. And the point raised by the question is incredibly important. First Nations engagement is a fundamental part of the engagement campaign that we're running right now and has been throughout the entire project. And coming from an external perspective, I must commend Wood Buffalo for the work that the Indigenous Relations and Rural Relations team has done to bring us to a place where we're able to have these conversations at all. I would really like to emphasize that today's presentation is primarily focused on the urban area, and that if the user were to go online right now to that rmwb.ca/MDP website, they would be able to see the more specific information we have for Fort McKay and the Janvier communities, as well as everywhere else in Wood Buffalo. And I hope that what they'll find through the material we provide for those communities is that there actually is quite a bit of recognition of the First Nations and the Métis communities that exist throughout Wood Buffalo. In terms of the broader plan, though, we are working very closely, as we mentioned, with the First Nations and Métis rights holders, rather, to incorporate to the greatest extent possible the Truth and Reconciliation Committee calls to action that the regional municipality itself has already identified as being important and imperative for the municipality to employ through the municipal development plan and other mechanisms. So I appreciate that the point's being raised, and we absolutely are making the greatest attempt possible to reach out to these communities and engage with them.
Thanks for that, Nick. And I just want to point out as well that we're doing another session like this. You've already alluded to that you'll find the information online next week. And while you don't need to be, from one of our rural or communities or Indigenous to be able to participate, next week we are going to be putting more of a focus on that and digging a little bit deeper into those aspects of the MDP that will be of interest to that audience. But again, as I said, everybody is welcome. I have another question here. Let me see. I'm going to direct this back to Andrew. Andrew, if you don't mind, the question is, how do you decide on the vision statement?
Well, I think, ultimately council decides on the vision statement. just to clarify that really quick. But how did we draft the vision statement? Is it was an iterative back and forth process with the planning department, looking at all of the phase 1 engagement, looking at the emerging themes that we heard. Part of that engagement was also, having it's like 35 different stakeholder conversations as well. And it was really just about synthesizing it and rolling that up into something that was sort of concise and really touched on everything that we had heard and that we felt was, sort of a strong statement of where we wanted the future to go and where the residents made it clear they wanted the future to go. So, it is very much a draft right now, and it's very much part of the conversation in this phase of engagement. So we'd love to hear feedback on it, but it's really just the component that started to emerge from the engagement and the conversations we had with stakeholders and the conversations we've had within the within Wood Buffalo itself in terms of like the planning department and others. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yes, of course, and we bring this forward, to council for their input and ultimately their approval of the municipal development plan. We have a question here, and it's from Henry. Henry, I think I might be able to answer this one myself, but certainly I'll invite Andrew to weigh in afterwards if you have anything to add. The question from Henry is, beyond February, what we're doing right now, what future opportunities will we have for public feedback? So, Henry, I can tell you that, we have talked earlier this evening about all of the engagement we've undertaken to get us to this point. Right now, we have a draft MDP. We're reviewing this. We will continue with the engagements. We will continue to hear your feedback. We have another virtual open house next week. All of this feedback then will be rolled into the final document that will be brought forward to council. And when that's brought forward to council, there will be opportunity for public debate and public input at that point. So if you don't have the information about how you can participate as a delegate, you can register as a delegate to speak on any number of issues that are brought before council at the meetings. And you can find the information as to how you do that at rmwb.ca/council. Also, we will make that information available on the MDP page of the website. When we are ready to bring this forward to present to council, we'll be sure to get through as many means as we can to get the news out so that people know that they do have the opportunity to come and speak before council to give their further input on the new municipal development plan that will be brought forward. We do hope to have that ready to bring forward to council. Well, I'm going to say in the second quarter, certainly before the summer recess. So, it's imminent. It's in the next few months. We'll be bringing that forward to council. Andrew, was there anything that you wanted to add? I'm just going to leave it at that for now, because I'm going to move on to the next question. And if you want to kind of circle back and add anything to that, you can. But in the meantime, Andrew, moving right along, the next question I'm going to direct to you is, how will post-secondary education be a factor in the MDP? So I invite you to both weigh in if you had anything to add on engagement, but also if you could answer this question that we've received online: how will post-secondary education be a factor in the MDP? Andrew.
Great, thanks for that. Such may actually be able to answer this with a little more clarity than I probably could in terms of post-secondary. I mean, it's certainly the desire to have or increase post-secondary education opportunities within the region, and the plan will make that statement very, very clear. In terms of engagement, you covered it off. You covered it off really well. But I think on the post-secondary one, Such, if you don't mind, I think you might be able to contribute a little more to it than I think I can.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you. So the question of post-secondary is an interesting one, because when we spoke to our in phase 1 of engagement with one of the I should say youth group, one of the bigger concerns that they had was the very reason why they don't stay here is because there are not a lot of post-secondary education opportunities in the region. And so through the MDP, what we want to do is we want to collaborate with the education institutions we have here to support them in bringing new programs. Now, this may not be a direct one-on-one support, but through the policies, the underlying idea is that we increase the amount of courses and increase the amount of education that we can provide in the region. That'll do two things. Number one, it'll help us retain more it'll help us retain more talent in the region, I guess, which in turn, will increase the population, increase the diversity, and bring about more prosperity in the region. So the idea of post-secondary education is not a direct one. Obviously, I mean, when education is a sector that is sort of governed by, I should say, province of Alberta. If you look at school boards in terms of high schools or primary schools, they're all governed by the government of Alberta. So it's not going to be a direct connection, but through the MDP, like I said, the underlying idea is how do we increase the amount of educational institutions or courses this region can offer to ensure that most of the talent that grows up here stays here. That's the underlying idea that we are working with. Again, the plan, we haven't really figured out policies in detail, but once we have them, they'll be in the plan. Back to you, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Such. It's so nice to think about, the people that grow up here and are educated here and stay here. That's great. I'm glad that that's going to be addressed. Such, I'm going to stay with you for this next question. The question comes from Rob, and Rob, I'm going to make an assumption here in your question. So if we haven't exactly answered what your intention was, please do send us another message or just go into the Q&A chat box there and let us know. Rob's question, Such, is, do you plan for increased population over so many years? And so I'm taking that to mean, like, do we have a way of making population projections, and how do we do that? But as I said, I'm going to ask Such to weigh in on this. And Rob, if we haven't answered.
Thank you, Nadia. The question is about population projections and do we plan for an increased population? So any plan, just to answer that question, this is a planning document that spans over the next 20 years, and any planning document does take population projections into consideration. For this plan, we have been working on various different models, and we haven't really arrived at a perfect number for us to say that this is the number that we will see or we are expecting to see over the next 20 years. But this plan does take into consideration increased population over the next 20 years. I mean, in terms of residential areas, you would have seen areas like Parsons Creek and Saline Creek They can accommodate about 40,000, 50,000 people when fully developed. And if we get to a point where those areas are developed and we need to identify more areas, we'll do a revision to the plan to ensure that more developable area is available as and when required. So to answer your question, Rob, and again, I'm not 100% sure if this is what you wanted to ask, but this plan does take into consideration the increased population over a period of time. Back to you, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Such. We have a couple of questions that are coming in. I'm going to questions about transportation and transit. So I'm going to address this first one here to Andrew. It's from Anonymous, but the question is, does transportation simplification mean taking away current trails, Andrew?
Simply, no. It doesn't. When you look at the 2011 MDP, there was some really big transportation infrastructure moves that were in it to accommodate a population of 230,000 people. And this is really just about saving the effort, the time, the money, and the expense of oversizing capacity when you don't need to. And really, yeah, it's not about removing trails or anything of that nature. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Andrew, for the clarification. I'm going to direct this next question to your colleague, Nick, who's joining us as well. Nick, the question's coming in from Karen, and she's asking specifically about transit. How will transit be part of the MDP? Nick?
Thanks for that question, Karen. Transit is an integral component of community planning, community development, so it's incredibly important that the MDP reflect the amount of work that the municipality has actually already done when it comes to transit planning, and then also reflects the current situation on the ground, which is the main reason that we're redoing the 2011 MDP. So to that end, the transportation master plan that Wood Buffalo has already prepared does feature heavily in this document, and we lean heavily on its recommendations and the investments that it believes are appropriate for the region. We also propose a lot of development policy and high-level direction when you see things like the neighborhood core on that Fort McMurray map. That's about ensuring that we're creating nodes and community cores throughout the region that can accommodate transit service, and that we're allocating appropriate levels of development to areas where existing transit service already is. So the answer really is, in summary, that we are considering transit, and it's being embedded with the good work that the region has already done, and we're just ensuring the planning that we're doing reflects that. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Nick. Thanks for that. This next question comes to us from Jeffrey. Jeffrey's listening in and has a question that I'm going to direct it over to Such, I think, maybe Andrew, but earlier this evening, Andrew talked to us about Krista's question, which was, how will the approval of the MDP directly affect me? And, you know, Andrew had talked about this. This is a little bit different question. I'm going to see if Such wants to answer this. Jeffrey is asking, how soon might we see impacts of the new MDP once adopted? Such?
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you for the question, and thank you for directing it my way. A plan of this nature contains policies at a very, very high level. So something like this, we typically, in these sorts of plans, we would wait for about 5 years to see if the plan is working or not working. This plan does not necessarily create, a direct impact, but it does create a scenario, a situation where this plan indirectly impacts the lives of the people. So, for example, if we talk about, limiting more development areas, that is eventually going to impact the lives of people in here, because the development will have to be either in Parsons Creek or Celine Creek, and we're not opening more areas for development. If we do so, then we'll continue to see oversupply of developed land in the market, which in turns affect the real estate in Fort McMurray. So it doesn't necessarily impact you the first day, but over a period of time, the policies in the plan will start impacting your life. Typically in plans like these, we keep a monitoring period of about 5 years, after which we will review the plan and we will see how the plan is working, if it's providing the amount or the if it's providing the amount of support or direction that is required to take our region forward. And if it doesn't, then there obviously will be opportunities for us to go back and revise the plan or policies, or make it more suitable for the current situation. So just to simplify it in 1 or 2 sentences, it'll take about 3 to 5 years for you to start some changes in accordance with this plan. Back to you, Nadia.
Thanks for that, Such. Thanks very much for explaining that. I have a question now. I'm going to direct it to Andrew. It comes in to us from Anonymous. The question is, you speak about a place and community-based approach. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yeah, I absolutely can, and thanks for that question. Is it possible to? Can they see the slides at the moment?
Ernest can put those up there. Ernest,
yeah, I just have the slide on the focus on people and community as sort of one of the big moves in the overarching components to the plan itself. And with that, I think as we've stated already, the previous or the existing MDP was very much about identifying areas of growth and keeping up with the pace that was anticipated in terms of population change and development pressure. And that the big shift here is that it's actually saying, okay, well, this plan needs to set out a direction that really starts to think about existing communities, existing residents, and thinking about the social, cultural, recreation, and employment opportunities to support a healthy region, and to give those opportunities for people to have fulfilling lives within Wood Buffalo, rather than seeing it as an opportunity to work for several years and to leave. And part of this comes into creating and recognizing the downtown as that cultural and civic heart. It comes into creating that potential blue and green network of amazing outdoor opportunities. It's thinking about transit, it's thinking about mixed use and local shops and services. It's thinking, I think one of the earlier questions on public art is that sense of place. It's all of these sort of components, and instead of just thinking about how and where to grow, it's really just, okay, residents of Wood Buffalo, let's focus the next 20 years on making this just an incredible place to live. An incredible place to work, an incredible place to recreate, and a really high quality of life, and a place to stay. And that's what the place or the community-based approach is fundamentally about. It's that shift from growth and the emphasis on community. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I just want to mention, if you haven't already put, for anybody listening on the line, if you haven't already put your questions in the Q&A chat, please do that. Megan just reminded me we're scheduled to wrap up here at 7:30, so we just have about another 10 minutes. We do have a number of questions that we're going to try to get to. The next one I'm going to ask, I think this is going to be, maybe Nick can weigh in on this. There's a question here, Nick, from Joshua. Joshua says, rural communities are an important piece of the region. How will the communities be included in the plan? Nick?
Thanks for that question. And rural communities really are a fundamental part of Wood Buffalo and a fundamental part of this MDP. So before I answer, I would like to remind everyone viewing today that there will be a second virtual open house next week on the 18th, where we go into a little bit more detail about the plans for the rural communities in Wood Buffalo and provide an overview of the growth concepts and land use schedules that we're proposing right now for those areas. So that would be a great opportunity to engage and weigh in on those topics. And all of that content is also available on the website that is on rmwb.ca as well for the project. That being said, it's incredibly important for Wood Buffalo to consider the approaches to growth and development that are necessary in rural communities and how different they are to that of the urban service area. So while the 2011 MDP heavily emphasized exponential growth and that growth largely bypassed rural communities, the new plan takes a perspective that reflects a lot of the planning that's happened since then in each of those rural communities. So as Andrew mentioned earlier, there have been a number of area structure plans produced throughout Wood Buffalo, and particularly focused on those hamlets from the top to the bottom of the region since 2011. And one of the major tasks that the MDP work that we're doing right now is to take those ASPs and reflect them in higher level policy that really enables the visions that these community members have for themselves. One thing we've also been doing a lot of throughout this engagement phase and the previous engagement phase is directly connecting with rural and Indigenous rights holders and stakeholders in those communities to ensure that we're bringing these same concepts that we're speaking to you tonight about to them and getting their direct feedback on them. So rural communities truly are an important piece of the region, and I want to assure you that they are being considered in this MDP and that their value is not being left behind when we write this document. So thank you very much, Joshua, for that question.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick, and thanks for reminding people again to tune in next week. Certainly everybody who's on the call here, you're welcome to join us. I think I'm going to hand things over to Such. Such, we have a couple of questions here, and you might have the final word of the evening. Before we do that, I did want to just read a comment. It's not really a question that came in, but it's relating to a question that Andrew answered a little while ago about transportation. So the comment is, Andrew, I just want to make sure we capture this, is transportation simplification the right term then? This plan should stand on its own. Perhaps the correct phrase should be right-sized transportation or efficient transportation. So yeah, so just to make note of that, we're just kind of wondering about transportation simplification, if that's the word. So I see Andrew there putting his thumbs up. Thanks, Andrew. And Such, I have a couple of related questions, and so I'm going to read out both of these questions in case you want to take them together. One is from Anonymous, asking, are you doing something about diversity in economy? And before you go, don't go to Such quite yet. Such, the second question here is from Steve, again talking about the economy. The question Steve asks is, what role did the energy industry play as a stakeholder in the construction of this MDP? How was it different from previous editions? And by previous editions, I think they mean previous MDP plannings. Such?
Sure. Thank you, Nadia. Thanks for both of those questions. I'd like to address them one by one. The first one, I think, was about diversity in economy. What is it that we're doing about that? Something that we have to keep in mind is we have been a resource-based town for the longest time, and our reliance on industry in terms of employment or job opportunities cannot just change overnight. This is a topic that we have talked about in detail. And what we want to do through the MDP is open doors for other kinds of industries, be it industries related to oil sands that are not here, be it related to processing of byproducts of industry, or inviting industries that are not in the region at all. Opening doors, providing ease of doing business are some of the concepts that we are looking into in terms of diversification of economy. We are also running in parallel to the place plan strategy that Council adopted, that Wood Buffalo Economic Development Corporation has been working on, to ensure that this MDP sort of synergizes with that document. And we are able to sort of create an environment where we can support economic diversification and sort of decrease our reliance entirely, well, I shouldn't say entirely, but decrease our reliance a little bit from the oil industry. The second question, I guess, was surrounding how has oil industry been part of this document making, I guess. We have had specific meetings with the oil industry, representatives of oil industry, I should say, about this document, and we've been working with them to understand what their priorities are over the next 20 years, how they would like our region to grow, and we've been trying to incorporate that in the MDP. So we've been working one-on-one with them and trying to balance out their expectations, their aspirations for the region in terms of growth and development with what we've been hearing from other stakeholders in terms of public or specific stakeholders like development industry or similar stakeholders, I mean rural areas. So it's I should say an act of balancing expectations and moving in a direction where everybody is I wouldn't say happy, but everybody is on board with the overall vision and the goals and the big moves that we're taking. Like Nick and Andrew mentioned, none of this stuff that we've presented today is written in stone, and we are 100% open to changing anything, be it a word or be it a policy statement, to reflect, to come out better for this MDP, I guess, is the right way to put it. So we are absolutely requesting your feedback, be it on anything. Give us your feedback. It really helps us, go in the right direction and come out with a better document that will help us together as a region to grow and prosper. Back to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Sach. And that was a great message to sort of wrap up this evening on. Our time is coming to a close and it's just flown by. We'd set aside an hour and a half this evening. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined us. Thank you for the great questions. Want to remind you just a few things before we wrap up. We are hosting another one of these virtual open houses. It's a week from tomorrow, so Thursday, February 18th at 6 p.m., same format. The presentation is focusing on our vision related to rural issues, but you don't need to be a rural resident to tune in. Everybody is welcome. You can find the information for that at, as I've been talking about all night, rmwb.ca/MDP. Also at that site, just want to remind you that there's a few other ways that you can still provide your feedback. You'll find some other tools there. For example, there's an online survey for you to provide some feedback, some discussion boards. You'll find all of that at rmwb.ca/MDP. And as we talked about earlier, we will be bringing this MDP forward to Council, and you will have another opportunity to weigh in and provide feedback in that public forum for debate. So we will be sure to post information at rmwb.ca/MDP when we have set the date, when it's confirmed on the agenda, and that will include information as to how you could register to be a delegate. I want to thank everybody from O2 and from my colleagues here at the municipality that have joined me in hosting this virtual open house. Mostly, I want to thank all of you who've taken the time out of your evenings to join us, to listen in, to ask great questions. And as Sach said, we really do want to hear from you. So thank you very much for joining us. Take care. Good night.